Hey guys, welcome back to Table Talk. Do you ever wonder why people like Devon and Vitali are almost unhookable? In this video, I'm going to explain why the high hook is one of the most effective techniques against hook pullers, and why you should master it if you want to avoid getting sucked into a hook ever again. Now, whenever you ask someone how to resist a hook, they'll probably tell you to use a low-hand top roll. And that's not wrong. Low-hand top roll is the most commonly used technique against traditional hook pullers. But some people might wonder, why isn't a high-knuckle top roll used against hook pullers? First, let's understand why one technique is used to counter another. A high-knuckle top roll attacks your opponent's riser and puts pressure through the top fingers. But that's less effective against hook pullers because the hook mainly applies pressure through the pinky and ring fingers. Here's a reference image. It shows which parts of your hand take on the most pressure during a hook. If you are forced into hook, this part of your hand is under attack. With top roll, it's the high part. That's why we counter top rolls with a high hand top roll and counter hook pullers with a low hand top roll. In a low hand top roll, you're relying on lower thumb pronation or wrist pronation to resist the hook. All the energy you apply is focused purely on rotation through your thumb. But in a high knuckle top roll, your power is split between rise and pronation, which weakens your defense against a deep hook. Now let's talk about the high hook. A high hook is generally just a low hand top roll with more cup. I once saw a comment that said, "Why are hook pullers training pronation?" It's a good question because people often think pronation is only for top rollers. But the truth is, everyone should train pronation. It's a fundamental part of arm wrestling, regardless of your pulling style. In a traditional hook battle, one of the pullers usually ends up in a palm-up position, relying mainly on their bicep for defense. The other puller will be in a palm-down position. When you're palm down in a hook, you can engage your brachialis, brachioradialis, and pronation, along with bicep. That's an attacking position. So if both athletes are equal in strength, the one with the palm-down angle will usually have the upper hand in terms of control and efficiency. In a traditional hook, most pullers give up their pronation early to focus on supination and inside rotation. Then after gaining control, they try to regain some degree of pronation to finish the match. But when you're pulling in a high hook, you're trapping your opponent on their bicep. This prevents them from using their brachioradialis at any point in the match. Devon has iron pronation, and he uses it even when he's in a hook. His high hook is not just powerful, it's incredibly technical. Most pullers rely on muscle strength, but Devon relies on his bone structure, leverage, and full body mechanics. Now you might ask, others also use their whole body, so why is Devon's hook different? Devon's elbow connection is much closer and tighter than most hook pullers. His hook is like an anaconda wrap, a fully connected high hook with a constant external rotation, where he curls in and locks his opponent, then using the rotation and drags them to the pin pad. It's nearly impossible to break. So far, the only person who's managed to overpower that hook is Gennady. Devon is actually structurally disadvantaged when it comes to hooking. He has long arms, which makes the hook game harder. But here's the key. He never allows his bicep to be isolated. He always maintains a strong connection with his brachioradialis. Let's compare that to what a low-hand top roll does. Low-hand top roll targets the opponent's wrist directly by applying pressure on pinky fingers, using lower thumb pronation or wrist pronation. It's a clean, direct attack on their wrist. But a high hook works differently. It doesn't directly attack the wrist. Instead, it allows the opponent's supination to happen. That might sound risky, but here's the trap. Even though hook pullers initiate with supination, they still need pronation, especially on the winning side, to finish the match unless they have a very strong shoulder connection, and that's where the high hook becomes deadly. If you get caught in a well-set high hook, you can't regain your pronation. You're stuck. Not only that, your wrist is under attack, even if it's not being directly targeted. The thing is, your wrist won't break if you just try to hold it, but if you try to attack sideways, you'll likely lose it. Unless you have an insane curling power like Matyushenko or Alijan, you're not escaping that position. But here's the critical point again. Your pronator must stay locked in with your elbow. If you lose that connection, your opponent can curl you in and detach your connection to pronation and force you to rely entirely on your bicep, which is a losing position, especially if you're being isolated and dragged in. The high hook is insanely effective, especially if you're a long arm puller. Why? Because having long arms with high hook literally forces the other guy to hold on to you. If someone with shorter arms tries to stay in position against a long arm high hooker like Devon, they'll struggle. Every time Devon pulls backwards, the short arm opponent's elbow risks coming off the pad. That makes staying planted extremely difficult. You can also look at it from another perspective. If the opponent is very strong in the hook, someone like Ivan or Rustam with insane curling power, then yes, using a high hook against them becomes harder. Why? Because when the short arm puller gets deep and tight, the long arm guy has less elbow connection to work with. To pull them out of position, you'll need a lot more back pressure combined with rotation. Otherwise, you won't break that angle. If we look at arm wrestling from a perspective of efficiency, getting the pin is always secondary. Fighting for position is the real priority. And that starts right from the setup all the way until you get the pin. Devon doesn't always go into an obvious high hook, but you'll notice he uses it whenever he's going into any kind of inside game, or even to get positioned to roll outside. Another guy who uses the high hook incredibly well is Devon Larratt. Vitali's low hand setup almost resembles a high hook, and he doesn't wait for better positions. He attacks immediately with everything he's got. Even for shoulder pressers, the high hook can be one of the best counters. It prevents your opponent from isolating your arm, as their pronator is taken out right from the beginning. And here's your tip of the day. Never train with a multi-spinner that has a small diameter. It won't help you much. Instead, use something that fully covers your palm. That way, your training translates better to real matches. That's all for today. Subscribe only if you liked the video, and see you soon.
Using it for probably about 20 years. There's been quite an evolution to it. When I first started to use a multi-spinner, I started to realize that I needed something thick that attacked my fingers